You know, one of the most horrible things about the internet and about digital media is that it is incredibly easy to erase. And I know everybody thinks, well, you know, you really can never delete everything off the internet. It's there forever. Most people are barely intelligent to navigate an iPad. They don't know about finding archival images of prior information. And a lot of the stuff, if you have enough power, can easily get scrubbed. Perfect example, and this is about revisionism. I was telling everybody about what the IRS was saying just a few days ago. And I've got it right here. There's a list. We're looking for 87,000 new people who want you to carry a blaster, except it doesn't say blaster. Be willing to use deadly force if necessary. Well, that got a lot of attention, so the IRS scrubbed that off of their website on the 87,000 people they're looking for. So I had some people, I posted this information over on Parler, a screen grab of it. I don't think that's true. I went to the IRS's website, it doesn't say that at all. It's like, well, it doesn't now. They scrubbed it because it got too much attention. This is about revisionism. People think that nothing is new underneath the sun. Our technology, our computers, and our iPads doesn't change the human condition. Cancel culture has existed for many, many, many countless eons. Here's a perfect example. I can't think of which ancient Egyptian king it was. This even made a show on Egyptology and archaeology many, many years ago. Anyways, Egyptian king, as they all do, they want to display, you know, their prowess and how great they are, and then they carve their names, have their names carved, not that they did it themselves. Countless different things. You know, and after they kick the bucket, someone else comes along, you know, they chisel all that stuff off and they stick the new king's name on there. Well, somebody found a way around that. It's kind of a genius, an ancient way of keeping an archive. And on some of these super mega statues, which are basically totally unmovable. I mean, it would take like 100 people to move them. They carved the original name on the bottom where they couldn't access it, at least not without tremendous amount of effort. There's a perfect example of ancient cancel culture. It's no different than today. The only difference between stone carving tools of ancient Egypt and today is that we're using MacBooks as opposed to chisel tools. Revisionism is a serious issue. If something is fundamentally true, it doesn't matter if it's from 2,000 plus years ago. I have an enormous amount of expertise on this, debating original, and I emphasize original Buddhism and other concepts of genuine early metaphysics. It's like it doesn't change. Well, that's old stuff, you know, things are different now. We got iPads and Tesla cars and, you know, all this other stuff. It's like that doesn't change anything. The nature of human ignorance, nature of suffering, nature of embodiment, the nature and methodology of transcendence is completely unchanged. There's countless documents where people want to revise things. One of them, of course, is the Constitution. This is not about politics in any way, shape, or form. Perfect example is that I've noticed this in the past 20 years, basically. You have all these people that want to recreate the United States to be something totally different than what made it, you know, extremely great. And, well, it's a living document, the Constitution. It's like, no, it's not a living document. I have a quote here from Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. Of course, he's dead now. This is what he says: the Constitution is not a living organism. It is a legal document, and it says what it says, and it doesn't say what it doesn't say. People that want to revamp things, to redo things, they'll say, well, it's a living document. It needs to change to reflect the times. And that's completely untrue. I do not claim to have any expertise on the Bill of Rights or the Constitution. For example, never been to Washington. I never want to go there where all those weasels live and pretend to work. But I am an expert on texts and scripture from ancient times, and they want to do the exact same thing that they have always done. This idea of canceling something out like you're canceling a stamp, and you know you're going to rebuild it. religions do this, and I don't ever touch religion. You know, there was, I hate to say this, but I mean it's true. You know, you have the Old Testament and the folks that follow the New Testament. It's the new version. We had Coke, now we got Diet Coke. And then there's new Diet Coke. And the new Diet Coke started, let's just say, Utah. Well, it didn't start in Utah, but it made its way to Utah. Well, and it actually sees things, and this is so very true of what I've had to encounter, debating, this revisionistic nonsense. It's also, too, called Baudelarization. Baudelarization means you're actually hiding out the stuff that you don't like. And this was done with the Shakespearean literature, which is not, full of a lot of things that would hurt a modern person's ears. And it is not racy, but I mean, as far as Victorian times and whatnot, they'd actually issue copies of Shakespearean literature, and they were Baudelarized, which means they took out all the wonderful, juicy parts of Shakespearean literature, the parts that were racy or, kind of a sharp tongue for people that were, hyper-puritanical. It's called Baudelarization. It's just taking out what you don't like. Well, I don't like that. We're going to X that out. We're going to change it to something else. And this is really heretical for a lot of different reasons, what I've encountered, telling people about, I was like, well, that's interesting that you view it that way, or that your guru Bada Bing says, well, my guru says, and he wrote a book. It's like, if we're actually discussing a topic, we actually have to have a point of reference. And when it comes to metaphysics, it has to be sola scriptura. If we're talking about William Shakespeare, for example, we wouldn't start conjecturing about what he did or didn't say. We'd reference his works. And the same would be true about historical Jesus, for example. We'd be referencing what he said. Like, well, book and verse, boom, 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 boom. We could say what it does or doesn't say. A lot of the serious issues with revisionism that I had to deal with for decades is that people say, well, I've read in the Abhidhamma, there's those 27 different versions of Abhidhamma. They're all much, much, much latter-day texts that are completely unoriginal to the original. If we're actually going to discuss what I did for decades, debate the topic of Buddhism, it's like, well, we actually have to debate what it says, not what it didn't say, not what Guru Bada Bing said, or some sort of latter-day stuff said. The new version. It's like, well, that's old Coke. We got new Coke, and we have Diet Coke, and we have the new improved Zero Coke, which is, I think Zero Coke and like Zero Mountain Dew is the same thing, except it doesn't use the chemicals, so that it doesn't have, 0 calories, which, what were they using? Splendid or whatever. Anyway, it had a chemical taste. Everybody knew basically what Diet Coke tasted like. It tasted like chemicals. Now they got a new version of Diet Coke, which is Coke Zero or Mountain Dew Zero. It tastes like the real stuff, except it has, changed it with some different. Well, there was Coke, and then there was Diet Coke, and now we got Coke Zero. And then I'm just trying to make this analogy about Coke and discussing, this revisionistic nonsense that comes along. So, well, it's the Old Testament and then the New Testament. And the new one is this spontaneously, and it just sprang up out of the ground. This new version. It's kind of like Coke Zero version of Christianity. I'm not going to mention the people that espouse Coke Zero, because I don't want anybody to have their little tushy hurt, like This revisionism is just so timeless, and I've encountered it too on so many different fronts. That if you're actually having a discussion about something, we have to stick to sola scriptura. The Constitution is not a living document, as I keep saying. Well, it's living. We need to change it to fit. I've heard that so many thousands of times over the past 3 decades. Well, we need to change that stuff. That's just not applicable. These people are divisive, corrupt, and they're malcontents, actually. Because everything that's within the original that made the country so great, and I'm not talking about the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, for example, is the same thing that made these metaphysics so great. Stuff is added on later by these people that want to revise things, and this is another reason why I never touch religion, because these people, they'll never actually read what the original documents say. Either that, or if they do read it, they'll be reading a slanted purposeful mistranslation. I've encountered that. There's not a 99.9%, and there's extremely few polytranslators in the world, and I'm one of them. I mean, extremely few. They're not actual polytranslators. What there are, they're schismatic people that have a religious slant. Kind of like if the Constitution were written in some ancient language, for example. You'd have people with their own little twisted slant that would purposefully mistranslate it, and that's the stuff that I encountered. So people can't get to the original. It's really, really, really important to have hard copies of original stuff. It's also incredibly important to be able to read the original. There's 4 translations of the Enneads of Plotinus. They're all wrong, and even the best one, which is the only complete translation, by H. Armstrong, is really wrong. The guy has no idea what emanationism is. He doesn't understand Plotinus. The only great translation is very, very small and partial by Thomas Taylor, the best ancient Greek translator who ever lived. I've encountered this stuff with the Nikayas of Buddhism. You have these sectarian guys in Southeast Asia, the saffron-robed Terawaideans that purposefully, literally purposely mistranslate this stuff, and they hide all the pro-Atman, pro-soul quote stuff. I mean, I've seen it thousands of times. There's this revisionism. They don't want, it's like a diamond that's buried underneath an enormous mountain of fecal matter. People like, and I've had so many thousands of people over the decades say, you know, I've read your translations, this stuff makes sense. When I looked at so-called original Buddhism, it looked like trash, the soul-denying moralistic nihilism, and I was not interested in it because that's just filth. I had no interest, but I see now it doesn't actually, the original stuff doesn't say that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't actually like you, meaning me. I don't actually like you or your personality or the way you present things, but, you know, now I could actually see the way it actually originally was. You know, how were you able to do that? Well, one, I'm a very excellent translator, but, you know, I'm not corrupted by all this sectarian schismatic stuff, which is just revisionism. They think it is like milk. The Constitution and these ancient teachings are like milk. You know, milk's got a use-by date. You know, after you go past the use-by as well, it starts to smell, you got to throw the milk away. You know, it's not. Truth is truth is truth. Nothing changes when it comes to wisdom, suffering, embodiment. There can be no change on that front. I mean, it's just completely impossible. The unfortunate thing has gotten so bad now that the entire world is living off the internet and their iPads, their computers. Like, I don't see it there. It's like it was there until it got an enormous amount of attention, and then it got revised, and now it's been scrubbed. The few people that know how to find the archive of certain things, you know, that information never gets out there. And if you do try to get it out there, here's, for example, Twitter themselves, and I've never been on Twitter, I'm never going to join it because it's easily the most evil website on the internet. The most evil? Well, top 10. It's very, very evil. It engages in revisionism and Baudelarization. It telling everybody that they are going to police what people talk about before November 4th. It also has been scrubbing things where people saying that we're in a recession, which we are in a recession. But they don't want you to know that. They're trying to brainwash everybody. Everybody's trying to redefine words, which is revisionism. It's Baudelarization. It's like, now we have to change what the definition of a woman is. They say, well, it wasn't a raid. Well, it was a raid. Well, it's not a recession. It's not the technical definition of a recession. It's like, yes, technically we are in a recession here in the United States. People confuse doctrine with commentary. I mean, for the decades that I was debating original Buddhism, said, well, Guru Bada Bing would say, look, I don't care what he says. That's not the point of reference. If we're going to discuss Buddhism lacking a time machine, the only pre-sectarian corpus is the Digha Nikaya, Majjhima, Samyutta Nikaya, and Gotara Nikaya, and the Khuddaka Nikaya collection. That's the only pre-sectarian corpus. It's even mentioned on the Pillar Edict of King Ashoka from the 4th century BCE when it mentions in Brahmi Prakrit, Panch Nikaya. It's the only pre-sectarian corpus, period. So lacking a time machine, the only thing we're going to say definitive about discussing the topic is that pre-sectarian point of reference. But people don't want to do that. And I've had to deal with this for decades. They'll talk about what Guru Bada Bing says. Like, well, that's not the point of reference. If we want to have an intelligent, logical discussion on something, we have to have a point of reference. This is where people, in ancient Pali, there's a phrase for this. They call them eel wrigglers. You couldn't pin them down on anything. And when you hold an eel, it will wiggle and twist and squirm. You can't nail it down, figuratively and literally. They won't. People that are sophists, which sophistry is one of the great evils, of course, that nobody really talks about anymore, they don't want you to pin them down. It's like, you know, if we're going to have an intelligent discussion about something, we have to agree upon a point of reference. People just jump into a debate. They'll just just flap their lips endlessly back and forth, yelling at one another, which is not a formal debate. You know, that's just yelling and argumentation. Not even professional argumentation where you engage the dialectic. So before we actually have a debate on this topic, we first have to agree on the point of reference. Like if we're going to debate law, we would actually have to say, well, we're going to talk about law from the perspective of what the Founding Fathers meant, because the Constitution and its Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, these are not living organisms. They were never said to be, for example. They were legal documents. You know, other than being written on vellum, they're essentially carved in stone. So if we're going to discuss it, then we have to use that as a point of reference. This is how you get people nailed down. It's like, I won't even debate you unless, and this is a really, really important thing if you're going to debate anything on the subject, because there are no authorities in debates. There's experts and there's novices. And this is how you get around the revisionism. Well, that's some old stuff. They literally would talk about serious metaphysics like it's expired milk. Oh, that's stuff from 2,500 years ago. Like milk, you know, it's gone bad. You need to throw it out. We need to have new stuff. Yeah, that's you know. But my guru says, and he's a master of Buddhism. It's like, no, if we're gonna have a discussion on, we can't even begin, because without a point of reference, this is how you get these people. This is how you get a eel wriggler. Or a sophist. This is somebody who is a revisionist. Yeah, this is how you get them. Say, well, first, we can't have a discussion or debate on the topic without having a point of reference. If we're going to discuss law, then we have to have points of references like the Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration. If we're going to have a discussion on original Buddhism, and I emphasize original, we actually have to agree upon a point of reference. It isn't Guru Bada Bing. It isn't revisionistic texts that came hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years after the historical Gautama died. We have to talk about the only pre-sectarian corpus that has to be the point of reference, which is, of course, sola scriptura, in debating that particular topic or that type of a discussion. So agree upon a point of reference before you debate anyone on anything. This is how you wreck somebody in a debate. Their whole belief system becomes an immediate train wreck. Once you get somebody on a point of reference, then after they will always immediately try to get off the point of reference. Like, no, we already agreed upon a point of reference. What you're discussing is something completely extra to the topic that we're discussing. We can't engage in revisionism because before discussing this debate, you agreed upon a point of reference. It's a really, really important. They have no idea how important that is. They'll agree to it because they're so unintelligent. They have no idea that that is the manner by which you will get them. Because they're sophists by nature. They're eel wrigglers by nature. They're interested in revisionism, i.e. Baudelarization, which is no different fundamentally than cancel culture. Cancel culture is ancient, just like the reference to the ancient Egyptian king's name of, I forget which ancient king. It was carved on the bottom of this megatonnage. They couldn't chisel it off of there. The internet is the best vehicle ever created for revisionism, for cancel culture. You just scrub it in a heartbeat, shoop, shoop, shoop. Like, it can be revised so quickly, if you blink, you'll miss it. They'll say, well, I've never seen that before. It's like, oh, well, I archived it. But who cares? The only thing that spreads faster than wildfire is lies. People will believe a lie 5 times quicker than they'll believe the truth. And that's a serious another issue, of course, with the internet. These are not living documents. These are not things that expire like milk. Fundamental truths of facts, logic, and wisdom. These things that are inescapable or unaffected by technology or the passage of time, such as the nature of embodiment, the nature of transcendence. None of these things change. Technology changes, fads change. Human nature never changes. Humans have not advanced spiritually countless thousands of years. They just have not. Nothing is different. Human beings, there's so many human beings now that are just sophists. They're revisionists. They want to engage in bowdlerization. They don't want to admit. There's a reason why there's this crazy zeitgeist going on in the world right now. The whole world fundamentally knows at its subconscious core that the earth is figuratively tilting off its axis as far as a reset. But these people are lying to themselves. They're just living in a fantasy land. You know it as well as I do, even if you fail to admit it to yourself. So, anyway, thank you so much for watching. This is my little video against revisionism. It's so easy to get these people. You just have to agree upon a point of reference before engaging in a formal debate. Well, we're going to have a discussion or debate and engage the dialectical. We have to have a reference point. Yeah. Some entities are better than this than others. Like no one would, even though it's happened, have a discussion upon Christianity. It was like, well, it's interesting I hear you say that, but where does it actually say or make allusion to this, book and verse? Well, nowhere. It's like, well, then we're not discussing that topic, because if we're going to discuss, for example, if we're going to discuss Christianity, we actually have to agree upon a point of reference. The only thing we could agree upon as a point of reference is the Bible, right? That would be the case. There's a perfect example. Another perfect example would be a Platonist or a Neoplatonist. Countless citation, book and verse citation. When we're discussing a topic, we have to have a point of reference. It eliminates out sophistry. It eliminates out the revisionism. The decades that I've been debating Buddhism, original Buddhism, people will use anything as a point of reference. Well, Guru Bada Bing said, it's like, nah, that's not the point of reference. Well, Abhidhamma says, like, no, that's definitely not a point of reference. There's 27 different versions. They're all sectarian, and they were all invented countless hundreds of years later. And there's not a point of reference. Well, I don't agree with you. I was like, well, whether you agree or not is not pertinent to what we're trying to discuss. This is kind of a dry topic. It's actually an important one to me. People should find it important. If you're going to have a debate with somebody, it's so incredibly important. Not to control it, but to have airtight references. Like a stake in the ground that's been driven 100 miles deep. It's like, this is the point of reference. If we're going to be discussing it, then we must use this as a point of reference. Without that, we're just flapping our lips and expressing our beliefs and opinions and conjectures. And that doesn't get anywhere. Life is too short to do that. It's like you two have been flapping your lips for years about topic, but you never agreed upon a point of reference. And that's why you don't like each other, you're always fighting, you're not having a dialectic discussion, and you're not reaching a point. Because people will always reference their beliefs and their opinions and their feelings and their conjectures. Like, well, this is, if you want to do that, that's fine, but you're not getting to anything. So remember that about revisionism and cancel culture. It's like, I hear what you're saying, but what's your point of reference for this? Because I see no facts, logic, or wisdom in what you're saying, nor relevant to the topic you're discussing. There is nothing within, for example, the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence or the Bill of Rights that even alludes to this, much less says this. Oh, that quiets people up so quick, just like that. It's like, well, that's just what I feel. It's like, oh, we're discussing not the facts or what the teachings or what the Constitution says or doesn't say. We were discussing your belief system. I didn't know that. I thought we were discussing, for example, the Constitution, what it did or did not say. Well, that's one thing. It's a living document. It's like, oh, it's not a living document at all. Have you heard that a lot in your life? It's a living document. It needs to change with the times. Like, no, it doesn't. Why would it? It doesn't need to change at all. There'll be some people out there that disagree with this. Like, sure, it's a living document. It needs to change with the times. Like, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.